Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Amy Calvert. Amy is the CEO of the Events Industry Council, which represent over 30 different associations, over 100,000 members, and about 20,000 businesses. And she obviously have an amazing view on our industry. Enjoy my conversation with Amy. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today, I finally have the great honor that she took the time to talk with me. Amy Calvert is the CEO of the Events Industry Council. She has been in our industry for quite some years, has a unique perspective of where we're coming from, where we're going, and I can wait to talk with you. Amy, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Eric. It's lovely to be here with you.
Same here.
Looking forward to this time. So I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
That's great. And I know you're extremely busy. And by the way, for those who don't know all the numbers with the Events Industry Council, you represent more than 30 associations, over 100,000 people, and close to 20,000 businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an organization when you think about it as a global federation, really serving all of the constituency that you just noted. But what really excites me is that, really our members come together to serve the entire business events, MICE ecosystem, right? So when you look at the economic significance study and you think about those 26 million professionals that work in our industry, really the work that we do is to really lift up that greater community.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring.
Now, the first question I like to ask, and I always ask my guests about that, how did you come to our industry? Because, today we have curriculum, everything. I personally fell into it by coincidence and felt something inside that, yes, that's what I want to be doing. How did you join this industry?
Yeah, I would say similar story. I fell into it. I studied liberal arts in college, English literature and art history. So, and everyone was asking me, so are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to go to law school? And I said, I'm not sure. Maybe. And then after I graduated, I had some jobs in sales, worked for a health insurance company and marketing coordinator. And I started to get this notion that somehow I was interested in food and beverage and in catering because I love to cook. So I had this wild notion that maybe it would be interesting to go work for a hotel and get into the food and beverage and the operations. And then from there, I was able to get an internship working for what was an independent property and eventually became a Lowe's hotel in Annapolis as a catering coordinator. They brought me over to, sort of as they say, the dark side and convinced me that I needed to get into sales. I wonder why. And sort of the rest is history. But yeah, it was really my love of cooking and food that I think ultimately brought me to this industry. But I think it's the people, obviously, and the relationships that have been built over time that really fuel me and keep me going.
Absolutely. And the relationship, if I remember well, when you were with Visit Baltimore, you created with two other convention visitors bureau an alliance, right?
Yeah. Actually, so those of you who've been in the industry for a while know that when I took the position at Visit Baltimore, Tom Noonan was the CEO at the time. He is now the CEO at Visit Austin. And he's a big collaborator. And, it was actually somewhat in place when I got there. It was a relationship between Fort Worth, Sacramento, and Baltimore that then eventually evolved into what we went through this whole kind of creation exercise with a company called Minding Your Business. And we did a lot of qualitative, a lot of quantitative research about what are the right cities for a city like Baltimore to align with. And it evolved eventually to Anaheim and San Antonio.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of collaborating and a lot of work. I think it was founded in, a strong value proposition for clients that were naturally rotating throughout the U.S. with their larger annual meetings. And obviously, the enhanced benefits around knowledge transfer and cost savings and so forth were sort of self-evident. But at the end of the day, I think it brought our community kind of closer together. One of the things I loved about it is that as we started to experience some of the things that we were going through in Baltimore, we had sort of a think tank, if you will, of peers within each city to help us navigate some of those times. But yeah, it was fun. And I still keep in touch with those folks. and they're still going strong. Junior Tuala, who's the chief sales officer there, and Mario Bass, who's the chief sales officer at San Antonio. We're in Baltimore for Destinations International, which was just last week, and we had a chance to catch up. And so even through new leadership and changes, that partnership still seems to be going strong, which is good.
And I think you said something extremely important that definitely I think should interest business owners, but actually anybody in any type of job and in the industry, is to have a network of peers, people that you can talk to, that you can trust, people that want good for you and won't hesitate as well to tell you exactly what they think, so that we actually realize that whatever you do, you're not the only one to struggle, right?
Yeah, I mean, you and I know that, and one of the things I love about, whenever I have a chance to sit down with you, is that we have those fierce, authentic conversations. And,
right.
This past 18 months has been, obviously so challenging, and there's been so much heartache and so much loss. And we all know professionals that have faced enormous challenges, changes to their career after 30 years that no one would have anticipated navigating. And yet, we've had a bit of a moment to reflect on things such as that, the importance of peer-to-peer engagement and networking, and how much more you get out of that investment than you ultimately end up giving. And so I think one of the roles that we all have to play as leaders is to help new people coming into this industry, or those that have been in this industry perhaps not as long as us, see the value in investing in those communities. And obviously my members all represent fantastic opportunities for engagement from that perspective. But whatever your passion is and whatever your area of interest is, to know that there's a community out there of like-minded peers and people to learn with side by side, I think is important. So yeah, I think that's part of how I think we can offer our leadership and inspiration coming out of what we've been through, is to remind people that, if they're feeling alone and they're feeling somewhat adrift, that there are resources such as the podcast you put together. I mean, there's just such a vast world of opportunity out there, and
absolutely
important people know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm reading a lot these days. I don't know how they call it, but basically the fact that after 18 months, to your point, that people have been reflecting about their life, about how they spend their time, about who they work with or who they work for, that actually there's a big wave of people thinking, so what am I doing this? What am I working with this type of people? It's always the same: lead, follow, get out of the way. But at the end of the day, you have only one life, but make most of it and have excitement when you wake up in the morning.
Passion. Yeah. Well, I think we're all sort of guilty of that, aren't we, though? We get into a routine, it's sort of a rinse and repeat. We're busy, we're busy, we're busy. And it's only when we find time to be quiet that we really, get in touch with some of those more important aspects, sort of reflecting and evaluating, am I really, doing what I want to be doing right now? How am I contributing? What else can I be thinking about? How else can I contribute? Or all those sort of tough questions that take, time and room. And while it's, like I said, it's been a challenging time, I think hopefully that's been something that we've all been able to do, sort of get quiet for a bit, where we're not rushing around, attending and participating, to really think about,
tough question. And also, tough question and tough people, because I have so much admiration for what you do in your position, having to deal with plus 30 CEOs of various associations and their board and their ego, and in the same time being able to bring everyone together and serving our industry. So that there's a lot of publication, there's a lot of work that has been done by the Events Industry Council. Maybe you can share some of the resources that people can get access to, and also how it came about and how you put that together.
Yeah, so I feel like I came into this position at a really incredible time. We early on in my time there, really in the first 6 months, the board was really kind of keen to get together and to to do a reflective exercise themselves and really work on a vision. And that was the first time I think the organization's ever really done that. We've had strategy after strategy, but I think to really, go back one step and say, well, why are we in existence in the first place? What is our true purpose? What impact can we have when we're living our purpose and we're living our values? And I mean, really, thank goodness we did that. And we had that to anchor to when the pandemic hit, because it helped. It was sort of our North Star, right? And we said, at the end of the day, we do serve the entire ecosystem. We are here to serve through advocacy, research, honing of professional standards, and of course, professional recognition, lifting up those examples of people that are having a broad impact, having a really meaningful impact. And so, and I've been really fortunate to have great board chairs in the 2 short years that I've been here. And I was having a conversation with Paul Van Deventer, the CEO of MPI, who everyone knows. And he said, EIC has such a strong legacy of harnessing the generosity of industry professionals from across the globe. And how can we, together, think about that? And I was sort of questioning when I came in why we had sunsetted the Apex Commission in favor of the new committee called the Insights Committee, which nobody really, quite frankly, knew about. I mean, there were great people serving as part of the Insights Committee, but it was a bit adrift. And I said, at the end of the day, I think it's, why not bring back Apex and use it as a forum to kind of come together to think collectively about what it is we're dealing with and how we address it. And, we convinced Kristen Horstman and Mike Dominguez to chair. David Kleiman, who I've known for many, many years as a dear friend, was really one of the primary thought leaders that really got behind the initiative. And we appointed this task force to really look at all these things. And we took a lot of time to reestablish our own values, our own vision, our own areas of focus, methods, if you will, and what the obstacles might be. And we set out on this course, and we knew we'd be on a bit of a dual path because there were things the industry needed right now, right? More insights around health and safety protocols and, things around, what are success metrics and what is it that I need to do as a professional to assess and mitigate risk, all of those things. And so this incredible group of about 30 plus people got together and they started producing these resources. I think we've had over almost 300,000 downloads of the various resources in the Apex COVID Task Force library. It's really incredible. And again, such an act of leadership and generosity on behalf of all of these folks. Global professionals from all sectors, all regions coming together to just share what they had. And, to your point earlier, so many of the individuals that work in our industry are independent business owners, minority women-owned businesses, small, medium enterprise businesses that don't have the depth of resources or necessarily the large staff teams to tackle some of these issues independent of one another. So this really, to me, my mission in life is to make sure as many people know about these resources as possible and come to the EIC website to access them, and then to, begin a bit of a learning journey, whether they find their way back to, professional standards, becoming a CMP, or to one of our members or to one of our partners. I mean, ultimately, we sort of want to be the great aggregators and curators of resources and learning pathways. So Absolutely. That's what that was really all about. But yeah, I mean, it's a great group, and, EIC exists to really tackle some of those pan-industry issues that we can't address or solve independent of one another.
And to your point, I can see it with the people that I'm coaching, and I'm doing some presentation for independent business owners. It's fascinating to me that people don't look at them as business owners or entrepreneur first. They're looking at themselves are executing meaning, which obviously is extremely important, is what we do. But before anything else, especially if you're on your own, you are an entrepreneur. You are a business owner. So it is your responsibility as well to define the vision of AIC. Well, what is your vision for your business? What are your values? What type of customer you want to have? What kind of life you want to have? What kind of team you want to build? So
I mean, that's where one of the things that one of our groups is looking at, there's two, you were, key, obviously, thank you for your help with business continuity, but there's also a group looking at new business models, right? How do we take the learnings over the past 18 months and say, well, some of the stuff that we were doing, we were just doing because we always did it. We weren't saying, how does this have an impact? How are people, we might have, this is Adam's line, might have permission, but do we have confidence that we're delivering a valuable experience? And, I think it's the tyranny of focusing, perhaps too much proportionally on what we do versus why we do it. And you have to start with a why. And I'm really a big proponent. I did this when I was in Baltimore of, we're all, first of all, my services team would always say, well, I'm just services. I said, well, actually really in business development, but that's okay. We're all here to sort of understand how we build the puzzle together. And that's an exercise in value creation. So you have to understand first and foremost your own value, and then how you align what you have with your partner and what they're aspiring to do. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of these storyboarding exercises when we were bidding on conventions, to say, well, this is Baltimore's strong value proposition beyond the obvious, right? Beyond the bricks and mortar. And I think we all, and this is one of the things that this group is really looking at, is how do we, through this maybe renewed commitment to true partnership, explore those deeper opportunities to create more value? Because we know there's going to be scarcity and resources all the way around. We don't want to and we won't be able just to do things because we've always done them. That would be a mistake, right? We want to build back better. We want to build back stronger. And part of it is, like you said, really understanding your value and how you bring value to your partnerships.
Yep. You said you had over 300,000 downloads of all your resource, which is absolutely phenomenal. Specifically for business owners, what type of resources can they find? And would you advise, I don't know, top 5 or top 3 resources that you would advise them to start with on the Events Industry Council website?
Well, I can tell you, I think they're all fantastic, and they all really are meant to work together. There are some common themes that are found, that are sort of woven into all of them, that are anchored to our principles for recovery, which are ultimately tied to UN SDGs, around education and equity and sustainability and impact. But, one of the more popular guides has been the Meeting and Event Design Guide, I think, because it has really meaningful and rich content around a code of conduct, which, we could probably talk for 30 minutes about the relevance of a code of conduct. For those of us who've been traveling lately, that's a whole rabbit hole that I won't go down. But, it has guidance around risk assessment and risk mitigation and how to establish success metrics, how to create some consensus internally within your organizations around the value of in-person events, right? So that you can then build your strategy. So it's really very, very well done. And they're working on a 2.0 of that right now, which I think will be great. And it'll have something in there around meeting choreography, which I think is so important. We're not, out of the woods, so to speak, yet in terms of implementing these protocols and thinking about what is the right balance. I think the B2B, B2C guide was really popular because I think we're resetting expectations around, what's possible given what our destinations, our venues, our organizations are all facing. So how do we, again, share risk, shared objectives, create and communicate experiences that people value and feel safe participating in?
Right.
And I think also really excited about the new work stream around, like I said, these new business models, because eventually we want to then be able to share broadly the resource so that we're able to adapt and put the practice into play in our respective regions. And it's really great work being done in some of the global regions right now, showing a lot of resilience. And so I think those are maybe the few that I would call out. The other one that I think is sort of foundational to our industry right now is this notion of how do we all commit to supporting our workforce and helping to not only think about inspiring people to come into our industry, but helping them reposition themselves through upskilling reskilling and continuous professional education, and then wellness. And those two were tied together early on very intentionally. And wellness in that we've all been through a tremendously challenging time, and we'll all go through that cycle somewhat differently. But to come at it and what we do with a lot of empathy and a lot of grace and a lot of, commitment to self-care, so that while we're out there in the world and we're doing the things that we do, we're really present. So one of my most favorite webinars that we hosted was early on, and it was on workforce. And we had a group of panelists just share so much vulnerability about the losses that they all experienced. And I think, honestly, Eric, was the first time in this industry where I've ever been in a organized event and people were just talking about, hey, these were the setbacks I faced, and this is how I navigated it. And it might not have been perfect, but what you need to know is you're not alone. Back to the idea about community and that peer network and the value of that.
Absolutely. So. And the first time, and I would say finally, because the mental health aspect is such taboo, and everybody's going through it one way or another at some stage of your life. And going back to business owners, it's a roller coaster life. Some days you want a business, you're very excited, or you're starting your company, whatever it is. One day you have a setback, you lost a contract, or somebody in your family died. And that's something that any and every human being is going through. And finally talking about it, and to your point, not only being okay to be vulnerable, but realizing that instead of staying on your own, you have people you can talk to. And that's another thing that I'm personally very concerned for independent business owners going out of this recession and in the next 6 to 12 months is depression, or sometimes worse. And that's something that we really need to talk about, and that people don't have to hesitate to share their feelings and their what they're scared about with others.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to raise it as a priority within our industry, right?
Absolutely.
I think, again, EIC, within this guide, there's some really, really great resources. And when we were doing the research, this is one of the things that I was, it was a bit of a learning journey for me, because we're doing this aggregating and curating, and there's a lot out there. If you go to any one of our member sites, there's rich resources, whether it's, resources around, equity, or resources around career development, or, resources around, some of the concepts around mindfulness and, things to help from, cultivating leadership. But we have to figure out a way to help people know about them and where to go. And then to have the courage, it's one thing to have the courage to go off on your own and start your own business, but to have the courage to reach outside of yourself to say, hey, I'm not sure, I'm uncertain, and we're all needing to really be accepting of that, and to be okay when we feel that way ourselves and when others feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, a previous podcast I had top of my mind is Dr. Sherry Walling. She shared that she's a psychologist. She's an entrepreneur. She married to an entrepreneur, so she knows very well the topic, and she gave great insight with that. Now, Amy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know a lot of people, not me, even in our industry, that are independent business owners, and a lot of it just takes. It's hard. It strikes me, and I've never done it, but you have to really find the right balance, because people are always coming to you and they want to pick your brain and they want to understand, but those are hours, and those are hours you're investing, and those are hours potentially financially or in any other way that you would never recoup. So, I think just to have boundaries and to be able to have confidence and to be comfortable with those is really important.
Absolutely. Right? Great point. Thanks for sharing that. In your position, Amy, you see everything that's going on in our industry, and not only in this country. Why do you see? What should we be aware of? What should we expect for the foreseeable future?
I hope that we collectively set expectations of ourselves to not go back to doing things the way that we've always done them, right? So when I think of what a year from now or 2 years from now will be, it's hard to say, but I hope by 2030, by 2050, we can take a look back at what we've done and we can be proud of the path that we paved for ourselves, that we were truly united in our effort to tell a better story about the business event sector, right? As a driver for economic growth and social progress. If we are the industry at its heart that fosters human connections, then we do have an opportunity to be a true catalyst for change, to drive meaningful change in the areas of equity and inclusion. And that's going to take a big commitment on all of us, the part of the role that we play as individuals, right? Because change starts with all of us as individuals.
Yep.
And the commitment that we bring to be part of a broader movement, right? So, I'm all about and talking about, how do we, as we navigate this path back to getting back on the road and to hosting in-person events, we intentionally plan for making room to adapt and innovate and not just always accept the status quo as what we're going to be doing going forward. And
Awesome.
and I think if that is the case, then, when we're faced with our next great challenge, like the one that we've just been through, we won't have to do so much remediation to gain the appropriate support for our workforce.
Yep.
And the policy support will be in place so that we can, maintain operations. We're an industry that has been practicing duty of care, since our inception, and yet it, was not on the radar of the policymakers. So I think when I take a step back and I look at all the great work that's being done right now, I have seen a wholesale shift in this desire to work more collaboratively. My hope is that we don't lose sight of the impact that staying connected can have for our future.
Amen to that. Thank you so much. I know you're very busy and I don't want to take too much of your time, but can you maybe, as a last question for today, but share with us what is your hope in next 12 months? What do you hope to see that industry change concretely, especially for business owners? What are the things you are expecting to see, you hope to see in the next 12 months?
So one of the things that we're working on, we appointed an equity task force. This is a group of about 30 people that's coming together to create an acceleration plan for equity in the business events industry. And so in 12 months from now, I hope we have a plan in place to be able to measure our impact from this effort, so that we really can look back and say, the investment that we've made in this endeavor has really, as a business imperative, driven some real tangible change.
Yep.
And so, we've done some great work in this area, but we haven't really had a holistic plan of how we're going to measure, So it's hard to say, are we really moving the needle? And, the question that we're needing to ask ourselves is, now that we know better, how are we doing better? Right. And so if this 18 months has taught us nothing else, it's taught us that we have an opportunity to sort of have a collective consciousness and to really tackle this issue once and for all by holding ourselves accountable. So
awesome. Amy, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again live.
Yes.
And in the meantime, wish you a lot of safe travels.
Thank you, Eric. Well done. As always, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Amy, thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. And thank you for everything you're doing for our industry and all the great resources that the Event Industry Council is making available on their website. If you want to connect with me, please go on LinkedIn or join the Facebook group www.eventbusinessformula.com/group, where we discuss everything related to owning your business in our industry. Thank you.